In today's video, we have some updated NHL trade rumors on a potential substantial trade that might be going down between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Anaheim Ducks. Plus, we also have another update on Pavel Zacha. He may not be heading to the KHL after all. And we have some other movement on the RFA front and some other UFA talk as well. We'll get into all the latest news and rumors coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of news, updates, and rumors to discuss here today. And I want to get started first of all with some news on the RFA front. Of course, yesterday we saw the news on Zach Werenski signing with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now we're seeing some updates of the Flyers organization. The talks seem to be progressing on Ivan Provorov's new deal with the Philadelphia Flyers. His agent has been quoted to say that they're closer now than they ever have been, and talks have been progressing in the right direction, and that Werenski contract certainly helped move things along quite a bit. So we should hopefully expect a contract for Ivan Provorov in the Flyers over the next few days before training camp gets underway. Of course, they also have to look after forward Travis Konechny as well. There hasn't been any updates on that, but at least on Provorov's front, there does seem to be some movement and some progress, and hopefully we're not too far away from seeing them get a deal done. Now, yesterday we talked about the possibility of Pavel Zacha going to the KHL on a new contract, and it wasn't quite clear if he had verbally agreed to terms or actually signed a one-year contract. And as I mentioned, that's certainly something that makes a vast difference in how this is going to go. If he's actually signed over there, then he's going to have to play there because they don't usually give out clauses to go back to the NHL. But if he'd only agreed in principle to terms, then there's, without putting pen to paper, that he could still go back to New Jersey. Devils general manager Ray Shero was interviewed and asked about this yesterday as well, and he really had a lot to say and really didn't have a lot of nice words to say about the possibility of that. And he said basically Zacha could sign wherever he wants, but ultimately they would like to sign him and keep him there in the fold in New Jersey. And now we're seeing reports this morning from NHL insider Elliot Friedman indicating that talks have progressed with Zacha and the Devils, and he may actually be signing after all. So that tells me that he has not officially confirmed to be signed in the KHL. Obviously, there probably had been some talks ongoing, but we hadn't seen an official announcement from the KHL club yesterday as well, so wasn't quite sure what to see of those talks, but looks as though that wasn't completely official, and Zacha may actually return to the Devils here after all. We also saw some updates yesterday on the Buffalo Sabres from GM Jason Botterill, indicating a couple of players, which won't come as any big surprise, definitely won't be ready for the start of training camp. Defenseman Lawrence Pilot and prospect goaltender Ukko-Pekka Laukkonen is not going to be available for the start of the year. They likely will both be available sometime around mid-November or well into the season anyway, so they're definitely going to be without those two. Of course, we also saw some news as well that they are continuing to talk to Jason Pominville, but he said he's not really planning on bringing anybody into training camp on a professional tryout. So the Sabres likely won't have anybody at their camp on a tryout, but the possibility of returning Jason Pominville, I guess, still does exist. There is a possibility that could still happen. Now, we also saw some news regarding Pominville and the Habs yesterday. General Manager Marc Bergevin had a lot of information discussed recently, and certainly the possibility of bringing in Pominville was discussed, and he indicated that there was no interest on Montreal's part. Again, like the Andrei Markov situation, they don't want to take away from their younger players and really want to go in a different direction. So Montreal and Pominville is definitely not happening at all. Now, during the Marc Bergevin interview, there's also some other tidbits that came out of that, indicating as well that they are working on a contract extension for Max Domi. He wouldn't get into any kind of details where talks were, which is pretty normal, pretty common here. But ultimately, it's good to know for them that he and Domi are engaging in talks on an extension. Domi is entering the final year of his contract right now, and obviously he had a fantastic year, career year last year. Obviously, this year will be big for him to see if he can duplicate that and keep it going, or if there will be any regression. Certainly, sometimes when you see players explode for that much of an increase in point production, sometimes you do see it scaled back as well following season. So I guess we'll see how Max Domi goes, but there are talks regarding an extension there with him in the Habs. We also had some updates here on the Boston Bruins as well. Apparently, they are talking to a few more players, which we don't know their names exactly who they're going to be, but there is a possibility they may bring in a few more players on professional tryouts at training camp. Right now, they do have defenseman Alex Petrovic signed to a tryout deal, so he'll be attending their camp. But as we know, there's a lot of injuries on that blue line. Guys like John Moore likely won't be starting the season. Zdeno Chara is still recovering from the jaw issue he had from the finals last year as well. So their blue line is certainly banged up. They don't have McAvoy and Carlos signed as well, which is not going to be helpful as well if they're not under contract here soon. So there is a possibility we could see the Bruins bring in some more players. Like I said, we don't know who exactly, but there's plenty of unrestricted free agents out there that are looking for work that would have some experience that they could consider doing that with. But it certainly would make sense for them to bring in a few extra blue liners just for the sake of camp and having some extra backup there in case things don't go well with injury recoveries or getting their other guys under contract. But with the fact that Werenski got signed yesterday and that we have news now saying that the Provorov contract's moving along, that hopefully will be optimism for the Bruins to be moving things along with their 2 RFA defensemen as well. So hopefully they'll get that looked after here over the next coming days by the time the training camp gets opened up. But if not, like I said, it's just something for them to fall back on as a just-in-case type of measure. Now, as most of you probably remember, not too long ago, Washington Capitals center Evgeny Kuznetsov got himself in trouble for testing positive for cocaine at the World Championship, so he's got a 4-year ban with the IIHF on international competition, so he won't be able to represent his country of Russia for any of those tournaments moving forward for the next 4 years. Of course, if there is a World Cup that is put on by the NHL, the IIHF has no agreement or any part of that, so he would be able to participate in a World Cup. However, as we discussed in that video when that news first broke, it was mentioned that he would have to have a meeting with Commissioner Gary Bettman. During that meeting, he'd have to discuss these on-ice issues, what happened at the World Championships, and I guess Bettman can decide if there's going to be any discipline from the NHL side of things. Apparently, that meeting has taken place, and all we knew is that it would take place sometime prior to training camp, because if the NHL is going to suspend him in any way, if there's going to be any kind of discipline, or if he's going to be enrolling in any kind of treatment programs or anything, that would have to take place before the season started, ideally before training camp opened. So I would not be surprised to hear an announcement from the NHL in the next few days if there's going to be anything further done on the Kuznetsov situation, or if he's going to be available to go to Washington Capitals training camp, if he's going to be any kind of programs, or what exactly is going to be going on with him once camp opens here later this week. Now, of course, the big news of the day was from Elliot Friedman indicating that there was intensive talks between the Carolina Hurricanes and the Anaheim Ducks, which could result in a pretty substantial trade between the two clubs. Of course, after they signed Jake Gardiner, the Hurricanes have been heavily rumored to be moving a defenseman. They were already rumored to be moving a defenseman before Gardiner was even brought in. They have such a rich of talents back there on that blue line that it really does make sense for them to move somebody, and the most logical one is Justin Faulk. Given the fact he's a pending unrestricted free agent, they already held extension talks with him over the offseason. Things did not go well. We are led to believe he was offered a pretty substantial contract extension and he was turned down, so obviously he must be looking for more money or more opportunity or something to move on. It's hard to say where his head is at exactly with everything. We don't know the exact figures, of course, that he was offered, but now the only hiccup here is that Faulk has a partial no-trade clause, and Anaheim is not on one of the pre-approved teams where he can be traded to automatically, so he will have to approve this deal if he's going to be dealt to the Ducks. Now, it's believed as well that the Ducks would like to ink him to an extension as part of this offer as well, so we'll have to see if he's willing to talk extension with them and waive his no-trade clause to become a member of the Anaheim Ducks. Now, of course, that would certainly be a big help to their blue line. They could use another right-shot defenseman with some experience and can provide some offense. Their right side's a little bit weaker outside of Josh Manson right now, so that would certainly be a big boost for them. Of course, they've made some other trades recently in the last few years with some other D, so bringing in a guy like Faulk, I do think would be a good move on the Ducks' part. However, the rumored return right now going to Carolina, because we'll have to wait for confirmation if this deal ever takes place, is forward Andre Kasha. Now, there could be other parts involved on either side of this deal. Of course, it's just a hot rumor at this point. It's not a for sure done deal, but obviously Kasha is a young forward who can certainly be a dynamic scoring forward. I know Ducks fans likely won't be pleased about trading Kasha away. He does have a 20-goal season under his belt from a few years ago, and he didn't even play a full season. Last year, he was expected to take another big bump forward. I personally thought we'd see 25 to 30 goals out of Kasha, but unfortunately, his season was derailed by injuries. I know at one point he battled a concussion. I believe he only played 30 games, but he did put up 20 points and was still productive during his time. So I really see him as an up-and-coming type of forward, but at the same time, the Anaheim Ducks do have some pretty solid prospect forwards who can jump in and take that ice time. They got guys like Troy Terry and Sam Steele and Max Jones, Max Comtois that are ready to move it into the NHL and take on bigger roles with the team. So even though Kasha is not an older guy by any means, he very well could be expendable from that sense, but he is a pretty young, dynamic player, and adding him to an already potent Hurricanes forward group is really going to make that team that much better if this trade actually ends up going down and being completed. But ultimately, it all boils down to Justin Faulk. Does he want this deal or not? Just like we saw earlier in the summer with Phil Kessel, where he was technically traded to Minnesota but had to approve the deal and ultimately decided not to and ended up going to Arizona. So this would be good for the Hurricanes to get this done before camp. It'd be great for the Ducks to have another top defenseman. Of course, like I said, it would be a pretty good deal for both teams, but I do think longer term at least, it very well could be a win for the Hurricanes if Kase turns out to be the scoring forward that we think he could be. But then again, Faulk could help the Ducks, and maybe it'll be fairly even overall. It's really hard to say, but that's the hot rumor going around the NHL right now, a potential big trade we might see before camp opens. We'll have more details on that as it becomes available, and if whether or not Faulk is going to be approving the deal or talking extensions with the Ducks, or however this goes. We'll update you further once we know more information. So that is all your latest news and rumors here for today. Let me know what your thoughts are down below, especially on the hot rumor regarding the Canes and Ducks potential trade here. Do you see that trade working out for both sides, or who do you think would win that deal if it is indeed Faulk for Kase? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments and we'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future videos, and give this video a thumbs up as well if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.